joined on the line by Graeme Mulcahy to reflect on Limerick's triumph on winning the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. And I suppose, Graeme, it's roughly been a month now, really. Has the feeling sunk in? Has reality come back? And are you in the midst of the club championship in Limerick? And does it feel like the glory days were nearly a year ago, not just only a few weeks ago?
Yes, I suppose it has, Jim. I suppose we got straight back into club action maybe 2 weeks after the triumph, so it was pretty much back to the business end of things. But I'm sure when the club championship's over, we'll be able to really sit back and I suppose take in what we achieved.
Yeah, and I suppose it's been a long year, Graeme, and you're still going. And you can maybe, when you got back, I read something there when you started off at the start of the year in relation to pre-season and stuff like that. You went down certain bonding routes and certain things and certain programs that were a bit different. And you went even, I heard, went in boxing and sparring against each other just as a new method of bonding. And could you tell us a bit about that? Because that seems a bit unique.
Yeah, I suppose the group got together and they just wanted to do something, I suppose, a bit different at the start of the year to make that, I suppose, Christmas period, that winter period a bit easier. And it wasn't actually something I took part in myself. I didn't actually join the panel until late January this year due to injury, so I wouldn't have been around for a lot of that. But it was definitely just from talking to the guys. It was definitely something that they usually enjoyed. It was just something different. You didn't have to have the hurling in your hand, or you didn't have to be out in the cold and the wet, running around mucky fields. So it was indoors, and it was, I suppose, a chance to take a hop off another player in the panel as well. So there was definitely fun elements to the pre-season, which I think just made it a lot easier for everyone.
Yeah, and I suppose the Alliance League was a big success for Limerick as well, in relation to the performances and the consistency, and in winning that all-important key game that Limerick was so close in many years of getting up to the top-tier division. But normally that key game would have gone against you in narrow and sometimes in so small little margins. But that confidence in the league sort of really kicked you on, and this with a young team and an energetic sort of squad, it did you an awful lot of favours, I felt, going into the round robin, that having that momentum behind you while other counties maybe were stop-start, a win here, a win there, you were coming in with serious momentum into the Munster Championship.
Yeah, well, we were kind of conscious that we wanted to be in a position for that Galway game to have a chance of going up, so I suppose we had to win all our games moving up towards that period. But up in Salt Hill, I suppose we were down 7 or 8 points at half time, and we came back from that and got a 1 point victory in the day, and that just gave us massive confidence moving into the next stage of the season. And it was great for the young team, as you said.
Yeah, and I suppose the round robin series, it was something new for all players, and the feedback between most counties was it was enjoyable experience playing for week to week, and the closeness of the games. It was the unpredictability of the nature was so many teams, given the last day, were in with a chance of getting to a Munster final, and it was so close and it was so nip-tuck. We saw what happened to Waterford. They were probably a goal line clearance from being in or out of the championship in relation to Austin Gleeson that time. But it just sort of brought a new sense of vibrancy to the hurling championship. And again, the younger, sort of bigger panel squads with lots of options, and if you avoided injuries, it sort of did most teams a favour. And that was something Limerick had, that you had depth and options, and again, an awful lot of momentum was built up there, and quality games week to week out as well.
Yeah, I think that's the key, quality games week to week. I'd say if you asked every player, I think 99% of players were delighted with the format. You're training anyway, you're playing challenge matches anyway, so we far prefer to be playing competitive games week in, week out. And as you said, it probably suited us a bit this year in the sense that we have a very strong and young panel, and on another side we avoided injuries, so we came into that Munster format, so was in a great position, and could have got a Munster final out of it, but we were very happy to get a quarter final, which was in a very competitive championship.
Yeah, and I suppose many other counties, when we see club teams, and it's great to see club teams going on a roll, but normally those club teams would have top quality players. In the case of Limerick and the Piershig, littered with quality players. But it's during the league campaign, and when they came back to the championship, there wasn't a sort of disturbance either in relation to that. There was competitions for places. When the Piershig lads came back, they were adding to the squad, but it was the sense of morale was still strong. And I know from example in my own club there, Ballyea, we had a good lot of lads when Ballyea got the run to the All-Ireland final that were missing for Clare and in relation league, and it sort of hindered them, Clare, for a long while without him. But there was no sense of that in Limerick, that when the Piershig lads weren't available, Limerick were still able to manage the resources, but when they came back in, it sort of boosted the panel options again. And that must be a great thing to see, that link between a strong club and the county and being able to work seamlessly.
Yeah, it is. I think getting through the league without the Pierce boys is always going to be a struggle. I think with the Fitzgibbon Cup as well, I think there was one weekend we actually went up to Antrim with 20 players, and it was a great testament to the squad to be able to come out with a result against them. And then moving on, I think when they came back, there were 6 or 7 of them back into the panel, and that gave us another extra boost, and we were going well at the time. So, but it's I suppose John and his management team integrated them back in very well. He gave them the time to rest after what was a grueling campaign for them, and I suppose they were probably with us 2 to 3 weeks before the Munster Championship. So to try and nail down a starting spot at that stage is always going to be extremely difficult for them. But in fairness, they integrated back in very well and trained very well, and I think Mike got in eventually, and then Shane was in at times, and then they had Peter and David and Kevin Downs and William McDonough hanging around the fringes of the panel, making a big impact on game day. So I think it was managed very well, and so we were lucky in that sense.
Yeah, and I suppose when many people look back, and I know myself in relation to the Limerick season, and I know you believed in the camp throughout the year that the All-Ireland was in sights for you, and a realistic goal. But outside of that, most people really started believing that in other counties that Limerick were genuine, serious championship contenders after that Kilkenny victory, and that would have been a game in many past years that Limerick would have been put up to Kilkenny, but Kilkenny would have come back with that strong sort of finish that we know Kilkenny are so have in their arsenal. But it was Limerick that powered to the finish there. I mean, when Kilkenny came back, Limerick regrouped, not this time, and they powered on to the finish. And it's a real testament of the real hurling skill and accuracy that this was a time that Limerick didn't falter when Kilkenny came back, and when Kilkenny get a bit of momentum on teams and that pedigree sort of takes over, teams sort of wilter. But ye stood up to the test and ye drove on.
Yeah, we did, I suppose, yeah. I think other years if Kilkenny had got a goal at the time they got a goal, we may have wilted and died away, but I think such as the group of players present there at the moment, and the trust that everyone has in each other and in the management, we kind of just, I suppose, trusted what we were doing all year, and thank God that in those last couple of minutes it worked for us.
Yeah.
We got a couple of scores and we drove on again, and I suppose ourselves, we probably still didn't think about being All-Ireland contenders. We were just taking it game by game, but I'm certainly did send out a message to all other counties.
Yeah, and I suppose then we move on in relation to I think the next game, the Cork game. What an epic game. Probably one of that weekend was a feast of hurling. We had Clare and Galway, we had Limerick and Cork, and it was definitely probably the weekend of the championship in relation to the high quality, the high closeness, edge of the seat stuff, and 2 classic games. And what was it like being in a roller coaster of that game with Cork, which it was going topsy-turvy? 1 minute Cork were looking masterful, next minute Limerick were coming back, and it was a sort of a tug of war in relation to a momentum battle. And it's those sort of games as a player, is it a nervous sort of grueling one that you want to say, oh Jesus, I just want to get this over with and come out on the right side of it? Or do you really enjoy those and say, geez, I'm really delighted to be involved in such a classic encounter and really relish the victory in the sense? Or is it just one of those games where that sort of you just want to come out of it no matter what with even a 1-point victory?
Yeah, well, I suppose being on the field, I don't think I find it as stressful as watching on from the line. I think I was on the field for probably 60-65 minutes and I find that fine. Just another normal game, but I suppose when I was off for the last 5 or 6 or 7 minutes watching it from the sideline, that's when I found it the most stressful. My hands in my head a few times and not being able to watch and yeah, I think from a supporter's point of view or a spectator's point of view, it's a lot more stressful than it is on the field.
Yeah, and I suppose that extra time period was really when Limerick really took over and really sort of drove on, and that sort of like, for an example of that, the options and the resources that you have, and Cork were a young team as well. We all know the likes of Dara Fitzgibbon, Mark Coleman, but there was a sense in that when the game went down the closing stages and that Limerick were not going to be defeated and that you were turned up to Croke Park and you were going to make a statement here in Croke Park and have another day out. And I suppose I know for myself, speaking to a few Limerick people there, that when they lost to Clare, the time Clare won the All-Ireland, they felt that maybe the Limerick, there was more in the tank that day and Limerick had more to offer. But this time around, Croke Park was the venue and you delivered in buckets.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we probably wouldn't be talking here today if I suppose it wasn't for Mickey Quaid's save there in the last couple of minutes. And then certainly we pulled the draw out of the bag, and I suppose going into the dressing room before that period of extra time, we were kind of probably on and up. Whereas Cork were after throwing away a lead, so that probably affected them mentally. But we also had the knowledge that and the comfort that the panel we had, we were going to be able to spring fresh legs from the bench, whereas they were, I suppose, relying on bringing guys back on. And I think on the day that was a massive benefit to us.
Yeah, if I can move on to probably the highlight of Limerick's year, obviously the All-Ireland victory and that day, and in the preparation for the Galway game in relation to that, had you studied or done much on Galway's quick start or in relation to seeing the game against Clare where Galway came out of the traps and blitzed Clare for roughly an 8 or 9 point lead before Clare just got even before Clare could even get going at all? And that was a key element that people meant maybe Galway are going to come out and try and blitz Limerick early, but in a flip switch in an event, it was Yee that came out and really laid down a marker and drove into Galway for that first 7 or 8 minutes that sort of flattered Galway in a sense and shocked them before they did come back. And was there much talked about that Galway start leading into the All-Ireland final?
I suppose amongst the panel, I'd say we would have been conscious of the start they had against Clare and they had against Kilkenny previously in the two Leinster finals, but we wouldn't have given it massive thought. We wouldn't have talked about it much. I think on the day it was just, I suppose we were hungry for success, and from the off I think we showed that hunger and tried to take it to Galway. I don't think it was a conscious thing, no.
Yeah, and lastly, Graeme Mulcahy, I'm nearly running out of time now, Graeme, but I just want to finish with this last point. We've seen teams make the breakthrough in many years. We see Clare, we've seen Galway, we've seen teams come and go for Tipperary, but the sense of being able to stay on the big stage for year on competitively has sort of eluded those teams. While I know Galway were in 2 or 3 All-Irelands before they were successful, but Clare into 2013, maybe they came back this year, but for 3 or 4 years they were in the wilderness. How important it is for Limerick, first of all, being playing the top division hurling next year, but also with the fierceness, the competitive, to get back to an All-Ireland semi-final again next year, play in Croke Park, and then take it on from there. Not to happen what happened to Clare happened to Limerick.
Yeah, I suppose the league next year, playing the Division 1A will be a huge asset to us, just getting 5 very competitive games and hopefully pushing on into a quarter-final. But in terms of the championship, then you have the Munster Championship, and we all know how competitive that is, and this was Cork and Clare top of the group this year. We came in third, and you're going to have a different animal in Tipperary and Waterford next year. So I think talking about our Ireland semi-finals is probably a bit premature. We need to, I suppose, focus on trying to get results in Munster first, which won't be easy.
Graeme Mulcahy, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on the airways, and what was a fantastic season for Limerick hurling and a fantastic year for yourself individually, personally. We wish you all the best with your club Kilmallock in the Limerick Hurling Championship, and hopefully it's not the end of the year for honours for you yet, Graeme. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much.
Cheers.